In the spring of 1878, the world had already decided Margaret Eliza Whitmore's fate long before she understood what it meant. At 19, Margaret stood at the edge of womanhood with hands that had known more ink than warmth, more rules than freedom. Boston had raised her with straight-backed discipline and silent prayers, but it had not raised her with mercy. Her father was dead. Her mother had followed him into the grave 2 winters later. What remained was a distant uncle who saw Margaret not as a girl, but as an expense. "You will be married," Uncle Theodore said flatly, sliding table, "and you will be grateful." Margaret stared at the document. It was official, stamped, typed. A mail-order marriage contractor, growing practice for women deemed unnecessary in the East and useful in the West. Her lips trembled. To whom? The uncle did not answer immediately. He rose, poured himself a drink, and said the words that would fracture her life forever. "An Apache." The room seemed to tilt. That's a joke," Margaret whispered. "It is not." He took a sip. "A respected Apache man, a landholder, a negotiator for the reservation authorities. He paid in full." Paid. The word burned. "I won't go," she said, rising from her chair. "I won't." The uncle's gaze hardened. "You have no inheritance, no dowry, no protection. This is your only option." Margaret looked down at the contract again. Her name had already been typed at the bottom. All that was missing was her signature. The journey west. 3 weeks later, Margaret sat in a rattling train car, heading toward a land she had only read about in sensational newspapers. Savages, hostiles, bloodthirsty tribes. She had been raised to fear them. Now she was being sent to marry one. Her dress was plain, her luggage minimal, her heart heavy with terror. Other women whispered when they heard where she was headed. "An Apache," one murmured. "She won't survive a year," said another. Margaret kept her eyes on the window, watching civilization dissolve into dust. The man she expected. She imagined him constantly. Tall, brutal, scarred, eyes filled with cruelty. A man who would claim her without a word, without tenderness, without humanity. Every mile west hardened that image in her mind. So when the train finally stopped near the Arizona territory, and she stepped down onto red earth beneath a merciless sunshade, braced herself, a small crowd waited. Soldiers, reservation officials, a priest, and him. He stood apart, straight-backed, calm, dignified. He wore traditional Apache clothing, but it was immaculate. His hair was tied neatly, his face strong, composed, unreadable. His eyes met hers, and he bowed his head, not in dominance. In respect, Margaret froze. This was not the monster she had been taught to fear. The forced vows. The ceremony was brief. No romance, no music, just obligation. Margaret's voice shook as she repeated the vows, barely hearing her own words. When it was his turn, he spoke in English, slow, careful, deliberate. "I will protect her. I will never raise my hand against her. I will give her freedom within my home." The priest blinked. Margaret's breath caught. No one had promised her freedom before. When it was done, silence fell. She was married to a stranger, to an Apache. The wedding gift. As the crowd began to disperse, the Apache man stepped forward. "My name is Taza Greyhawk," he said calmly. He gestured, and a young boy brought forward a small carved chest. "This is my wedding gift to my wife." Murmurs rippled through the onlookers. Taza opened the chest. Inside were documents, land deeds, legal papers, official seals. "I place half of my land," he said clearly, and all future profits from my trade routes in her name. The priest gasped. The officials stared. Margaret nearly collapsed. Taza turned to her. You were not purchased, he said quietly. You were chosen. Tears blurred her vision. In a single moment, everything she believed about him, about herself, about the world, began to crack. And she did not yet know that this gift was only the beginning. Margaret's hands were still trembling when the chest was closed. The murmurs around them had not stopped. Soldiers whispered. Officials exchanged uneasy glances. No one had expected this, least of all her. Half the land in her name. She looked at Taza Greyhawk as if seeing him for the first time, all over again. You didn't have to do that, she whispered, her voice barely steady. I did, he replied simply. Because it is right. There was no pride in his tone, no attempt to impress, only certainty. That unsettled her more than arrogance ever could. The ride into his world. They left before sunset. Margaret expected Chain's rules control. Instead, Taza mounted his horse and waited for her to do the same. You may ride beside me, he said, or behind, your choice. Choice, she swallowed and climbed onto the horse beside him. The land stretched wide and unforgiving. Red earth, distant mountains, a sky that felt too big for her fears. The reservation lay ahead, but Taza guided their horses, not toward the clustered dwellings she expected, rather toward open land near the foothills. Is this where you live? She asked cautiously. Yes, he answered. If you wish to live here. Her heart skipped. If I wish, he nodded. I will not cage you, Margaret. The way he said her name carefully, respectfully made her chest tighten. His home, the house, was modest but solid, built with skill, not haste, clean, orderly. Inside, everything was prepared. A private room, a bed with fresh linens, a chest for her belongings. You will sleep here, Taza said. I will sleep in the outer room. She turned sharply. But we're married. He met her gaze evenly. Marriage without consent is not marriage. No man had ever said that to her. You owe me nothing, he continued. Not your body, not your obedience. Only honesty. Margaret felt something crack open inside her chest. Something painful and frightening. Why? She asked. Taza looked toward the window, where the mountains burned gold in the setting sun. Because my people have had enough taken from them, he said quietly. I will not be another man who takes